Good afternoon. My name's Joanne Welch. I'm the campaign director of Backto60.com. We campaign on behalf of 3.8 million 50s women who are seeking the full restitution for their earned dues with a world-class legal team led by Michael Mansfield QC, and our team of experts are with me today, and we are going to ask them questions and they'll answer them for you. So my first question goes to Professor Jackie Jones, barrister MEP for Wales, who this afternoon on the panel explained to the audience, courtesy of Byline, loving Byline, how Backto60 is going to restore, remedy, full restitution to 3.8 million women through the courts and through Parliament. So Jackie, could you please explain to us about CEDAW and full restitution?
Thank you, Joanne. And everyone, you should go to Byline Festival. It's fantastic. It really is. Thanks. So the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination is CEDAW. And it was passed in 1979 and we ratified it in the UK in 1986. And it says for women, if the government discriminates, so if there's any policies or laws that discriminate against women in any way, shape or form, any form of society, then the government has to get rid of it. So Margaret Thatcher passed that in 1986 and we're still waiting. But what we're trying to do is use CEDAW as a vehicle to get pension justice for women born in the 50s who've lost their pensions and that has been taken from them. So there's something called a temporary special measure, which means that it's a mechanism used in Parliament that passes like a statutory instrument or any other mechanism that Parliament uses to say women need to get their full restitution because they've suffered past injustices. So that's what we're trying to do now.
Thank you, Jackie. That was a full explanation, and I hope people can easily understand what we're trying to do. My second question is for Dr. Davina Lloyd, who is our UN envoy. She went out to Geneva several times, and she met Professor Alston, the special reporter for extreme poverty, who fully supports Backto60.com and our early day motion. And his right-hand man, Coldo Kazler, is here today with his team, and we're looking to catch up with them later. So Davina, could you please explain to us when you went to Geneva, what you were hoping to achieve and how wonderfully successful you were?
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Byline, for inviting us here. This is the most amazing place. I want to come again. Everybody should come here. When I first went out to the UN in Geneva, I didn't even know what CEDAW was. And I think as an educated woman, I should have known. It is the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. So whereas we are covered under our issue, which is a pensions issue, lots of other groups of women are also covered under different forms of discrimination. So it's an amazing vehicle to get equality for women. When I went out there, my main aim was to raise the issue of the 1950s women who'd already been very discriminated against throughout their lifetime with the CEDAW committee. And they were incredibly supportive. And they added our issue to the issues that they were going to quiz the UK representatives on later on in the year, which they have done so. Our parliamentary representatives thinks that there's no need to give any rights to women because women, of course, have got complete equality and there is no need to do anything more. In their response to our petition, which Jackie put online, their view was that if you implemented equal rights for women, it would discriminate against those groups which do not contain women. I can't think of many groups that don't contain women, but obviously there is one, and obviously I still can't understand how men would be discriminated against by giving equality to women. I started campaigning as a student in the 1970s. I worked with Roy Jenkins to bring about the Sex Equality Act of 1975, which has made things right for all future generations. I did not expect 45 years later to still have to ask the government to give us equality, and that's what we're asking for.
Thank you, Dr. Davina Lloyd. May I now introduce Christine Austin, who's Special Advisor to Backto60.com. She's also going to tell us about the impact on 50s women of the swift escalation of the state pension, and how women, some women, not all women, lives have been annihilated.
Hello, thanks again for the wonderful invitation, Byline, and it's been really great. I came in the back door, if you like, from Backto60. I am a 60s woman. I was born in 56, and I was surprised by the amount of impact it's had recently with my cohort of friends, because on the outside people just look like they're coping, but actually the veneer is now cracking and you can see what's going on underneath. In the south we're very privileged because you don't see it very much, but even in the south there are a number of women who, especially those, we were the first generation that actually took on divorces, so it was very rare. I lost my father when I was 7. My mum was widowed, very young, 32, and it was very rare to see that, and a woman being on her own. But when you look now, it's quite many women are left on their own resources. And what happened was that they took final settlement divorces, which was based on the fact that they would be having their pension at 60. They were often left with the children, so they took on a mortgage or kept the mortgages going, not on paying the principal, but only on interest only. So many of my friends now have come to the end of those terms of those pensions, those mortgages rather, and either had to top up until they've got them until they're wherever, or they're taking lodges, they're taking or selling the properties, downsizing, which sometimes it's appropriate, but other times it's really traumatic. And the other circumstances are that the women themselves just feel like they've got no need, no one's really taking any stand on it. When I first started work as a woman in banking, we've gone so far, because I was told on the front line, I was in the front of counter at the time, and it was back in beginning of 73, when there were very few, there weren't even computers, and so what we did is we had to, the bank manager said that you couldn't wear trousers, you had to wear a skirt. So we went through that, and the heels and everything else, and being respected. And so I feel that at this point of time, that if we allow the government to treat us, and they've got the prefix of Right Honourable, and I'm really, really passionate that they should stand up and be noted for that, because the honourable thing is to put the 50s women's situation right, because at that time when we had no nursery provision, we had to pay for our children, and it was often we had a conversation as to who was going to be earning the most and who would give up, and then were you able to earn enough money to pay for the nursery fee and make it viable to actually have the children looked after. And so what happened was that you didn't have an opportunity as a woman to build up. Even if you did work, you haven't got a great occupational pension. And now, and in the early days as well, we never got topped up for when we were looking after the kids. So if you did take the option of being a full-time mother, you were penalised for it in your stamp. So the situation now is that the 50s women, we didn't know about it, and then when it's actually implemented and you're looking for your pension, that you don't have it because of the fact that it's been taken away, and with no opportunity. And many of my friends were made redundant in their 50s and 60s when they're doing reorganisations with companies. It's quite an easy way to ease people out, because they're usually the most expensive because they've been there for a long period of time. So coupled with that, we got told that we could do a mature apprenticeship. Well, they don't exist, and the government have come up with the most ridiculous quangos of what we are supposed to do. But it's not really a great society when we're treating the vulnerable. And as I say, most of in the south we're privileged, but if you go up north, there are many, many women who are living, and their husbands as well are being impacted, because they were expecting in areas like collieries and where the industries have disappeared, they're expecting that income to come into the house when their wives were 60, and they're left with nothing. So we need to get on to each of our MPs, put pressure on them to get this as a first stage, and then behind it that everybody should be respected in their maturity, and that we get a respectable deal. deal. And so I'll pass over again.
Thank you, Christine. On that subject, we want to talk about intergenerational fairness. I'd like to introduce Hannah Manzer. She is part of Professor Jackie Jones' team in Brussels. They work closely together. And Helen would like to explain her generation's thoughts on pensions.
Great, thank you very much, and brilliant to be here at Byline, and it was an absolute pleasure watching the panel discussion earlier on. I think that it's really important for younger generations to have an idea of the pension scandal, because this isn't something that just will affect older women. Gender equality is about not just, the particular group of women that this particular issue is affecting, but it's about solidarity across generations. I think it's important for young people to understand this, because as was discussed in the panel earlier, this is a testing ground for future changes to pension laws. This is dangerous not only for the women that it's affecting now, but for future generations. So I think that intergenerational solidarity and support is invaluable, and I think it's really important to put more light on this issue. Great.
Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you, Hannah. So the call to action is, please will everybody contact their MPs and say, sign Early Day Motion 2296 and activate the temporary special measure via a statutory instrument, as Professor Jones has just explained. That will enable us to secure back our own dues. That said, Boris Johnson has already said he's going to sort this matter out, so he could literally pick up the phone today and do so. We went to number 10 on Thursday and delivered an open letter signed by 177 MPs with Unison, who is 100% behind Backto60 full restitution. Thank you everybody for listening. Byline!